guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Web3 Quick Bite podcast, the podcast where we jump to the latest beats in the decentralized world and chat with some of the brilliant minds in the Web3 industry. I'm your host, Alapisi, and this week, guys, I'm diving into the crypto ocean to bring you juicy blockchain wisdom. Today, we are in for a real treat as we welcome a true Web3 veteran to the show. Take a minute to imagine someone who's been surfing the crypto wave since 2015. Way before it was cool. That's our guest, Ashton. Ashton has been working full-time in crypto for over 7 years, which in this fast-moving industry practically makes him a sage. He's been involved with some major projects you might recognize: Phantom, Elrond, Cosmos, just to name a few. But what's really cool is that Ashton is not just about the tech. He's also worked with regulators in Australia and the UAE to help shape the legal landscape for DAOs and smart contracts. Talk about wearing many hats. These days, Ashton is working on his company called Open Mesh Network, which aims to transform cloud and data infrastructure for Web3. We've got a lot to unpack today, from Ashton's journey in the space to his thoughts on where Web3 is heading. So let's jump right in. Hi, Ashton. It's so great to have you on the show. How are things going over at Open Mesh Network?
Hi, thanks for having me. Open Mesh right now is a lot of noise happening internally and externally. Exciting, but at the same time, daunting.
Right, we'll get right into Open Mesh much more later in the show. But first, let's talk about your journey. You've been in the crypto space for over 7 years. Can you walk us through your journey starting from that Ethereum meetup in Sydney in 2015? What sparked your interest, and how did you transition from running Bitcoin meetups to founding your first blockchain startup?
Sure. I was in San Francisco. I had a startup, Web3. Before Web3, I had a biotech startup. I moved to Australia. One of the things that I wanted to do, I wanted to find a very interesting industry. And my background, I grew up in Sri Lanka. So I kind of experienced a lot of these centralization and kind of like a corruption related things. So for my childhood, I experienced a lot of these, like a centralized power. So I was looking for something that I wanted to put myself, because I thought biotech is a great way to basically extend human lives, possibly. But it was early, so especially extending human lives is not a easy thing to do. So I was looking for something impactful to do. So when I moved to Australia, I came across Ethereum. I knew about Bitcoins before, but Ethereum, something I came across 2015. I attended a meetup, a small meetup in Australia, in Sydney, in CBD. So that person started, talking about Ethereum. The first keyword, it was a decentralized virtual machine without a middleman. So I thought okay, I want to know a little bit more. So I met this person, started chatting to him, and then started learning about Ethereum early days. And soon as I kind of got my head around, it took a couple of weeks, maybe a few months to understand Ethereum, not in a technical way, more philosophical way, because I always like to understand why people are doing certain things in a way. So for Ethereum, for me, having a self-evolving, self-governing ecosystem without a middleman, and being able to interact with that platform a permissionless way is very inspiring for me. For me, it's a true democracy, using technology to demonstrate true democracy, something that I really, really liked and inspired. So therefore, I decided to go full-time Web3.
That's quite an interesting journey. So this question is dear to me because I love to get people, I love to hear about people's experiences, how they heard about Web3 and how they found themselves going down the rabbit hole and eventually building something or creating something in the space. It's a question I always look forward to asking my guests all the time. So thanks for sharing that, which brings me to the next question. Looking back at your early days in the crypto space, what were some of the most exciting or transformative ideas that drew you into the world of Web3 and blockchain?
The first, I think, Ethereum. I remember about Bitcoin network, but I didn't really understand the use case at that time. So my first point of contact with Web3 is Ethereum. Um, I think Ethereum was a very, very interesting journey, early days. Ever since Ethereum, I think for me, one of a big initiative or a great innovation, I think IPFS. It's having like a global distributed storage where people can store information and then make that information permanent, and being able to keep your files without no one can able to remove, having a permanent storage. I think that's something really, really inspiring and exciting. So I think after Ethereum, I would say IPFS is something really, really, really a good innovation. Lately, if you asked me what I excited the most, other than open mesh related things, I think CCIP from Chainlink. The idea of, I think Chainlink, we people don't give much credit to Chainlink, in my opinion. Like a Chainlink guys and Chainlink team, they know how to build technology like way, way before anyone anticipate. If you go back in time, like before, like any DeFi and NFT became big deal, they talked about price feed, they talked about decentralized oracles way back in 2017. But people didn't understand what was the value proposition of decentralized oracles. But now people use decentralized oracles, especially Chainlink price feeds and off-chain compute every single day for lots of DeFi-related applications. I think CCIP is the same. A lot of people don't understand the value of this CCIP. Having a protocol, being able to communicate with different blockchains, and you can write a smart contract from one blockchain and execute another blockchain, and being able to transfer assets between blockchains, it's a really, really innovative thing. I think that's something that I'm really excited about.
That's exciting as well. So while you were explaining your journey and then also answering the second question, I think it's safe to say that Ethereum really did play a major part in your Web3 journey.
The major part, the major part, I would think maybe how do you manage stress? I think that's like a major part, because I mean, people don't understand or anticipate that when you get into Web3, and if you're building in Web3, you need pain tolerance like an elephant, right? So you need to be able to,
Okay, that's right.
yeah, you need to be able to like keep going, because it's not like typical startups like in Web2 world. You've got a bunch of VCs and people come in and helping you to basically raise money. And then you've got your, some capital in your bank where you can just access to, you pay for your people. But in crypto, if you have your assets in Ethereum or Bitcoin, it's a wild west, right? So when you take a loan, maybe you can go to Celsius and put your Bitcoins to get a loan. You go to our platform, you go to FTX, maybe put up your, or you go to Binance. And what happens sometimes, your capital that you have put on FTX to borrow a stablecoin loan is gone. So when you put your Ethereum on Celsius to borrow stablecoins to pay for your stuff, it's gone. So how do you survive in this space? I think, you have to build things, you have to move really fast, because in Web3 space, sometimes some industries double every 3 months. So how can you build something at that speed, but also like bombarded with all these volatility related measures and security measures, where, in Web3, you get attacked. If you're doing something great, you get attacked positively and negatively, right? So someone try to take advantage of you every single day. So how do you survive in that kind of environment? It's kind of a war zone, and you have to be navigating everything coming at you. So it is a tough thing.
Can imagine. So let's talk about your company, Open Mesh. Can you tell us about Open Mesh Network, and its plan to address some of the infrastructure challenges you've observed in the Web3 space?
Sure. So Open Mesh is another company. So I deliberately didn't register for a company or nor started like a foundation. It's very important to keep the Open Mesh network as pure as possible. Similar like a Bitcoin network never registered for a company or a foundation. It's basically open source. So Open Mesh the same. Open Mesh, it's a decentralized cloud network. The simple way to understand, if you're familiar with torrent networks, torrent networks are peer-to-peer networks where you can share files and movies and songs. So anyone can upload a file into the network, and anyone can download a file out of network. So we are building a similar kind of a architecture. The only difference here is you can run compute, not just sharing files, but you can also run compute. Think like AWS, taking AWS web services like storage, compute, and databases, merging with like a distributed ledger technology like Ethereum. So that is Open Mesh. Is basically a decentralized cloud. Our value proposition, like the one of the important one for me, is the immutable cloud. The idea of immutable cloud and permissionless cloud. So what that means, if you hosting a website that represent, let's say, Web3 services, let's say like Uniswap. Uniswap is a decentralized exchange, and then you can access the decentralized exchange to swap assets. But if the front end is hosted in AWS or GCP or Google cloud provider, cloud platform, the question, where's the decentralization, right? So that's a choke point. If regulators and government want to shut down Uniswap, they will contact AWS or GCP. So the idea, being able to host a website or a database or run some Web3 applications, and not being able to alter by anyone, I think that's really important idea. So we're working on immutable cloud where people can run services, host websites without a middleman. So we apply same principles like how people apply for like your crypto. For example, if you have crypto in your wallet, your hardware wallet, you have, let's say, Bitcoins or ERC assets, you want to transfer or you want to do something with it, the only person can do that is you, as long as it's a hardware wallet. So your touch points are, you connect to a public permissionless blockchain, you connect your wallet, and once you authenticate with your hardware wallet, you can transfer from your wallet to anyone. The only person can stop or do something is you. If government or someone else don't like that, what you're doing, they cannot do anything about it. So we apply the same principle for cloud. So your hardware wallet, your hardware Ethereum wallet, connect with the Open Mesh, we call it containers or virtual machines. So when you host your website, it's basically wrapped with a Ethereum wallet and a smart contract. So the only person can have access to your website is you. Only person who can edit the content of your website is you. So the idea of having this immutability built into design is something that I really admire and excited about.
And hearing you explain what Open Mesh Network is about has got me really excited to myself. It's really exciting. Now, which I have a follow-up question to that. Looking at Open Mesh's vision of decentralizing cloud and data infrastructure, how do you see this potentially reshaping the Web3 landscape in the coming years? What excites you most about this approach?
Okay. So if you take a step back, if you look at today, because in people in Web3, everyone needs, we want decentralization and freedom, right? That's like the key pillar. We need transparency, decentralization, and freedom. Because essentially we need a democracy. Now, the sad reality, like more than 82% of critical infrastructure, like when I talk about critical infrastructure, things like dApps, Web3 services, front-end, databases, APIs, validator nodes, most of these critical infrastructure are built in centralized cloud providers like AWS and GCP, which is Google, right? And then at the same time, the most active RPC providers are centralized and privately owned, like Alchemy, Infura, all nodes. These are all private corporations. Now, the issue here in decentralized space and Web3 space, we want decentralization and having this element of immutability. However, in Web3 space today, if we have 82% or more is still hosted in centralized cloud providers, the question is where the decentralization, right? And I think that is the choke point. Our goal is to address that. If we can move this centralization, if you can address that centralization even 1%, that's what we are focusing on. And I'm very excited about that because being able to provide immutable cloud for our space to accelerate Web3 industry and also support the decentralization philosophy, that's something that I'm really excited.
All pretty exciting too. So let's talk about your previous involvement with projects like Phantom, Elrond, and Cosmos. How have you seen the Web3 landscape evolve since you first entered the space? And what are some of the most significant changes or improvements you've witnessed? You've been involved with innovative projects like Phantom, Elrond, and Cosmos. How have you seen the Web3 landscape evolve since you first entered the space? And what are some of the most significant changes or improvements you've witnessed?
I think we are kind of like going into more centralization space. So what I mean by, like, take a look at a lot of most prominent Web3 projects today. A lot of Web3 projects have foundations behind it. So you have a foundation contracted some people like team members to execute a roadmap. And some projects like Web3 projects, they have like CEOs. They have a traditional management structure. So to me, I think it looks like we're building like mini S&P 500 style Web3 companies today, which is not ideal. So that's one thing I see as a negative. As a positive, I think we are actually maturing a lot of our technologies because we have to acknowledge that the marketing usually get ahead in our space. Like a lot of people talk a lot way before like a technology get some sort of adoption or technology gets some sort of at least having opportunity for technology to mature. So for the last 4 or 5 years, I think a lot of technologies have evolved, especially smart contract space, building a DAOs, building like scalable blockchains and etc. But I still see the centralization aspect is being a big problem. Having foundations and private corporations try to support decentralized projects and managing decentralized projects roadmaps, I think it's not a good thing.
Why do you think it's not a good thing?
So just take a look at like large, Web3 projects that maintaining their roadmap. So it's a foundation. Foundations mean what? Foundations mean you have to register into a specific region or a country, and if you have people who behind it, then you have to have people has to be attached with that organization, and having a private or non-profit foundation means having shareholders and directors. You have to have a bank account. Having a bank account means you have to have account holders and signatories. And these foundations, they have agreements between people. And then when you have CEOs and C-level executives, it's a traditional management structure, inherently centralized power. It's basically creating a middleman and creating a choke point for the project, in my opinion, making the decentralization value proposition just worthless.
Yeah. When you put it like that, I think I'm starting to see reason or why it's not a good thing, actually. So I have a follow-up question to that. You've spoken about decentralization quite a number of times in this conversation, and we know the concept of decentralization and self-sovereignty are central to Web3. But how have you seen these ideas mature and be implemented in practice over the years? Do you think we're closer to achieving through decentralization now than we were in 2015?
We're having difficulties, I think. There's an internet issue. I'm not sure if it's my end or your end.
I'm not sure too. So I guess no, it's fine. I can always edit this part out.
Okay, cool.
I have a follow-up question to that. You mentioned decentralization and you've mentioned decentralization quite a lot in this conversation. So how do you think how have you seen these ideas, the decentralization ideas mature and be implemented in practice over the years? Do you think we're closer to achieving through decentralization now than we were in 2015?
Answer, I think I don't think we will ever achieve fully decentralization. Compared to 2015 to today, I think we are more centralized, in my opinion. Because if you look at many Web3 projects, many Web3 projects go down the route to be more, let's say, regulatory friendly. They create foundations backed by whether VCs backed or backed by specific legal wrapper. So that's a choke point. So what's the difference between Apache Foundation offering open source software compared to like Solana Foundation supporting Solana network, right? So having a foundation, I think it's a centralized choke point. Because these foundations, they have bank accounts, they have agreements between the teams. Some Web3 projects have CEOs, right? And also some projects that have a C-level executives, they have a traditional org charts, management structure. These structures and methodologies basically going to introduce inherent centralization and centralization related power So it's kind of creating the middleman, and then choke point itself is built into the project itself. So, that I think a lot of these Web3 projects, when they call it decentralized, I think they need to rebrand themselves because they're probably misrepresenting facts.
You said that well, right now we actually more centralized than decentralized, right? So do you think it's because there is a huge Web2 interference, or what do you think that is? Because everyone in Web3 keeps talking about Web3 decentralized, blah, 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 blah. The government doesn't have any hold over Web3 and stuff. But just like you said, I do not think that is exactly what is going on.
No, I think we have a more centralization compared to 2015, for sure. Because first of all, we have more projects, we have more participation. The choke points have actually increased significantly. Like if you want facts, 2020, like 20 to 30% of critical infrastructure, like front end, back end databases hosted on centralized cloud providers like AWS. Last year, if you look at last year, like 2023, December, that number doubled. Right now, it's more than 80% of critical Web3 infrastructure hosted in centralized exchanges. And how many projects are going through the route of like registering themselves in BVI or registering in Singapore as a foundation supporting a Web3 project? Like, I think more than 90% of all projects, they choose the single route because they want to raise money. They want to be comply with the regulations. They choose that route, having a foundation, and then you've got agreements between the foundation, and then foundation provide grants to support the roadmap. So to me, it's the same structure like in Web2 world.
So there's no hope of that changing anytime soon.
I don't think it's going to change because people are comfortable, right? It's comfortable. Imagine you say you are running a decentralized project and you're getting a paycheck, $20,000-$30,000 a month, and then you're basically saying that you're building a decentralized project, and you've got hundreds of thousands of supporters supporting it, and you've got a couple of millions, hundreds of millions of market cap. People are comfortable. They're happy. Right, so why do you have to like not have a foundation in that case?
Oh, well, right. So you mentioned something about regulation, which brings me to my next question. You've worked with regulators in Australia and the UAE to legalize DAO and smart contract frameworks. Can you share some insights into that process? But most importantly, how have you seen regulatory attitudes towards Web3 change over time?
I think we need to change some perspectives about regulators. So first of all, we think like a lot of people in Web3, they say our regulators are dumb. They don't understand Web3 space. They don't know about decentralization. I think, in fact, regulators, depending on which regulators we're talking about, a lot of regulators have internal teams. Some of them ex-team from Ripple. Some of them people who left Binance to join regulators. So I think some regulators have really solid teams who understand like not only basics, but they understand it from a deeper technical level. So that's first thing. Second thing, when it's come to regulations, I think a lot of people, without having a really deep thought, they start automatically assuming that you need to build technologies that comply with regulations. In other words, you're welcoming regulations without even understanding why you need regulation in the first place. It could be like maybe a nice thing to say to the investors. We are comply with the regulations, so come and invest in us, or they feel comfortable. I'm not sure, but I think asking regulations early, and also trying to build a technology around regulation, that's not innovation. That's basically killing innovation. Innovation and breakthroughs will not come through a regulatory framework. It comes from like not following regulation, not following rules. You have to follow, the breakthroughs and advances that you as a user or you as a founder, you as a developer, and you have to follow that. Regulators will follow through later if that technology or breakthrough became a success, not the other way around.
So, in your own experience, right, what are the biggest challenges facing the Web3 space today, particularly in terms of infrastructure and adoption? How do you think this compares to the challenges you encountered when you first entered the industry?
I think the biggest challenge of Web3 to me is noise. So what that means, a lot of people expect a lot of things out of, from you. And there's so many voices, right? The noise can be quite distracting. That can be also a challenge. Other than that, I think, our space, we have like a lot of resources, capital, innovation. The challenge, I think, the noise and expectation management. Like a lot of people expect like technology to be adopted like within a year. And then you have a large group of speculators speculating on based out of a token or a project. So these are challenges because you cannot expect like an infrastructure project to behave like a meme coin. Yeah. But people expecting like that. And infrastructure space is boring in my opinion because, it's very time consuming and it's a lot of work. So, but some users in our space, they just looking for like a meme coin type of a behavior.
I mean, that's a fair point actually, because everyone is moving to Web3 because of the hype, the noise surrounding it. That oh yeah, waiting to Web3, you have to just do a little bit of trade there, start a project there, get funded, and then you're on your way to making loads of money. That's the idea that a huge percentage of people in Web3 today have. That Web3 has a lot of money. All you have to do is just polish your pitch deck, be lucky enough to get one or two investors, and then just try to do a few things and put out a press release that your company has gone bankrupt, and then go into hiding for a couple of months, come back with brand again, and then it's just crazy when I hear people say things like that, or I've seen projects like that have done that over the. I mean, it's just a lot of noise, just like you said. And I really, 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 really hope that in years to come, we have sustainable and long-term projects come up and just change this whole idea that people have about how Web3 works.
Yeah, it's going to be challenging. I think people always follow these, shortcuts. Yeah, I don't think it's going to change anytime soon.
Actually, I do appreciate your honesty. You say that it's not going to change anytime soon. I mean, like some people, they'll say, oh yeah, just give it a few years, things are going to change. But you be super honest about your opinion on these things. Like, it's not going to change anytime soon, so don't get your hopes up.
Yeah. Because the biggest use case in Web3, whether we like it or not, is speculation. That's the biggest use case, right? Trading and speculation is the biggest use case today. You try to call it like, yeah, we've got product market fit here and there. A lot of users are coming. Not really. Like, who's like majority of people in Web3, they're just trying to speculate to catch the next wave and try to trade. That's it.
Well, that's true. Especially this year. This year was Solana meme coin. There was this one popping up everywhere. Most people got into Web3 this year because of quick cash. Just put 1 Solana, make 100 Solana. in a week. I mean, those are the things that the short-term things are what is really hurting the Web3 industry.
Uh-huh.
And so this is an important question for me because I know you've been involved in both the technical and community building aspect of Web3. How important do you think grassroots efforts like the meetups you used to run are for the growth and adoption of blockchain technology?
How important you said?
Yes, how important do you think these grassroots efforts are for the growth and adoption of blockchain technology?
I think education is very important. Like educating young population is very important. Like at least like understanding the danger of centralization. Yeah, I would start there. Because if you don't understand more deeper problems, and what kind of a solution that the Web3 industry trying to solve, if you don't understand that, I think there's no point try to bring new users. Um, my goal is not to bring users to join the next, trading pump coins or whatever. So I think it's very important that we focus on education and telling people why Web3 philosophy, or at least decentralization philosophy, is important for the future. Whether there's a right approach or not, centralization is terrible. At least like letting people know that the world today is controlled by 4 or 5 companies, especially IT and data related. And then the very same companies also try to dominate our industry. So at least like telling people that is very important. In order to educate people, I think, today we have great tools like, I think AMAs like this is very important, going to different communities and start talking about it. And I think we also like commercialize the idea of like thought leadership now, which I don't really like. Like if you go to large conferences like like Token 49, Consensus, whoever sponsoring the biggest, they actually give you like a speaking slot, which I also like find it very odd. So platforms like that is important because people come like miles away to come and listen to someone to talk. It is important that we acknowledge people, and have platforms like that to share messages. So I think to your point is quite important that we have uh, those activities happening in our community.
Yeah, I also agree with you. I think the most important thing for Web3 growth is to educate people about what's going on in the space and let them know that, okay, this is how things should be done, this is how things should not be done. Education is one of the key factors. It's one of the most important things for growth and adoption. So I agree with you. So you mentioned centralization. The the debate between centralization and decentralization is ongoing in the free space. Based on your experience, where do you see this balance heading in the next few years, particularly at the infrastructure level?
Yeah, I think centralization is going to win. So because look, we have to acknowledge, right? You know, take all the Web3 projects that focusing on building infrastructure today, like put everybody into one basket and compare that into the large corporations who are basically dominated Web2 industry today. Like when you compare all our infrastructure projects compared to Google, AWS, Meta, Microsoft, we are not even cockroaches, right? We are like bacteria compared to those large corporations. And they have a majority. They have the resources. They have well-established structures. They have talent. So you can't compete. So yeah, it's cool. I don't know. Maybe maybe it would take like maybe couple of decades. Like who knows? The earlier we push this is better. It could be maybe huge disaster happen in centralized world where everyone just kind of suddenly wake up and then they realize the value of decentralization. I mean, it could be that. But right now, looking at the horizon, centralization is winning, like in miles away.
So, do you think this is due to the fact that Web2 has been around for a very long time? Web2 has funding, has a lot of users, and whatnot.
Yeah, ultimately people don't care. Like, if you ask someone, hey, do you like decentralization, centralization? They're like, well, yeah, but I don't care because I'm worried about to pay my next bill. You know, I have to worry about paying bills. I have to worry about finding the next job. I have to support my child. These are like day-to-day struggle for middle class, and for them, I don't think it make a big difference for them whether it's a decentralized IT or centralized IT.
Right. So, we're ending this conversation with knowing that centralization is winning on all fronts.
I think for it's up to founders, up to innovators, up to developers, up to great thinkers to basically offer services that ultimately benefit humanity. So asking users what they want is a terrible thing because in user experience design or design thinking, you say ask the users what you want, but often users don't know what they want, right? So it's up to you to create the world that you want, and then users will come. I think in decentralized space, we have to understand some of the users that we really want. They don't even exist today. So that's the type of future we should be focusing on. And like we shouldn't compare, Web 2 versus Web 3, centralized version versus decentralization. I mean, centralization is a really nice maybe a reference point to understand the concentrated power monopoly. Understand like, hey, we had this before, like we've been there before, like thousands of years, because we had dictators, we had pharaohs, we had empires try to control the world before, and we have the same kind of a structure. So it's a good reference point, right? However, in order to make it into a mainstream, don't ask the users, just build it, right? And if you build a good enough solution, and if the economics make sense at scale, the users will come anyway.
Oh.
So it's up to founders and innovators and like early people to get that right.
Right. I agree. I completely agree with you. Hopefully, we're able to get it right in the next decades to come. So, given your experience with various blockchain projects, what do you see as the most promising developments or trends in Web3 right now? Are there any particular technologies or approaches that you're especially excited about?
Other than open mesh tech, I think CCIP, something I really excited about. The other area, I think, the area of like zero knowledge proof, bringing zero knowledge proof for specifically into like Web3 services and infrastructure related services is something that I'm really excited about. I'm not fan of like all this AI hype merging with Web3. I think it's just over promising, under delivering at the moment. Yeah, I like the idea of the cross chain messaging, cross chain asset transfer, which is CCIP, and I also like ZK, which is zero knowledge proof.
So you mentioned something while answering my last question. You said the AI integration of Web3 is overpromising and under delivering. Why do you think so?
Um, I think the teams like in Web3, like AI projects, like let's call it, Web3 AI projects. I don't think they haven't come up with something native for Web3. What are they doing right now? Basically replicating that already exists in the centralized world in using like a more distributed way. It's like rendering image, maybe doing a large language model. Um, to me, it's like, okay, what's the use case, right? So you're saying, hey, you can run your image rendering in a more decentralized way, but other than having a token or having to pay like in tokens, well, what is your core value proposition, right? So those things don't make sense. But if you say, hey, I build a type of on-chain agents that can schedule certain activities and activate certain functions with a more intelligent way. So you have like a living and breathing on-chain agents in a smart contracts layer that can execute things behalf of you, or you can write a smart contract call to that intelligent agent to ask more questions regarding the function related smart contract function related, and then let that smart contract, intelligent smart contract, to execute things that a developer will take, let's say, maybe 1 month to develop, and then having maybe collective a smart contract agents executing things behalf of developers, behalf of protocols, behalf of DAOs. Okay, that's interesting. Um, those type of use cases are more interesting for me rather than saying, hey, we can do image rendering or LLMs on decentralized way.
Put it like that. I have not even thought of it in this way before. I haven't. So now I'm going to go back and do my research on projects that AI projects in Web3 or AI projects that are integrating with Web3 just to see their use cases. I really have to do my deep research on them. So how do you see the role of open data evolving the Web3 ecosystem, and what impacts do you think it will have on innovation and adoption?
Um, so let's define what is open data means, because you can define open data in multiple ways. But for me, just picture you have, like, if you want to get a history of Ethereum records, and if you want to, let's say, get historical records of what happened during FTX crash, like order books data from Coinbase, Binance. If you want to aggregate, or if you want to listening to like real time activities happening in Uniswap. So where do you get that information today? If I ask you, hey, can I have a copy of Ethereum transaction happened in 2014? Where do you get that? And if I ask you, hey, I want to do analysis on the correlation between gold and Bitcoin in 2016. So I want to understand what happened in crypto market when gold price goes up. I want to do analysis. So if I ask you, hey, can you do an analysis? Where do you get the data? So imagine you have like a torrent network. So torrent network, if you go to torrent network today, you can download movies from early 2000, right? You go to torrent network, as long as you have the torrent file, you can download like, I don't know, Titanic, 1997 Titanic, you can download it, right? And so imagine you have all the Web3 data on a network which the data is verified and also you can download anytime. To me, that is open data. And not only that, imagine you could access that data without a middleman, without relying on any third party. And this data is available to anyone from anywhere. And that's very powerful. I think for me, that open data initiatives can help a lot of developers, a lot of students, a lot of analysts, a lot of even like regulators and lawyers will be useful.
Wow. It will be indeed. It will be indeed. Thank you so much, Ashton, for today's conversation. It was really super insightful. Well, truly insightful. But someone with a non-technical background like me, I learned a lot from you. And the way you were honest about your opinions and you were straight to the point. It was really great. It was really great to see and to hear you talk about some of these things. And I'm sure that my audience will also learn a lot, just like I did today. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, for having me.
Right. That wraps up today's episode of the Web3 Quick Bite podcast. We hope you enjoyed the discussion. If you have any feedback or questions, please reach out on social media or send an email to web3quickbites@gmail.com. Thanks again to our guest Ashton for joining us, and thank you listeners for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more exciting content, so be sure to subscribe and tune in. Bye.